back to Rating the List, where we review, discuss, and reimagine popular movie lists objectively. We're your hosts. I'm Jerry.
And I'm Brad. And on this episode, we'll be exploring number 21 from Sports Illustrated's The Top 50 Sports Movies of All Time.
All right, number 21 is Pumping Iron, released in 1977, directed by George Butler, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger and Lou Ferrigno.
A look into the world of professional bodybuilding following 1975 Mr. Universe and Mr. Olympia competitions, and the competition trying to dethrone longtime champion Arnold Schwarzenegger.
This is really just a showcase of Arnold Schwarzenegger, I felt.
Well, it's kind of about him because he's like won it for like 7 or 8 years in a row. He's held the title forever, and this was the last time that he was going to do this. So he was, after this competition, these two competitions, he was stepping down from professional bodybuilding.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was.
And then who would have known? He became a governor. About it,
after
watching this and then know that he was the governor of California, that's insane.
Yeah, I guess.
My God. Okay.
But it's not. I think Ronald Reagan's even more ludicrous.
That's insane too.
And he became president.
Yes, he did. Well, we don't want to go down that road.
Yeah, but anyway, I think it's more about trying to showcase the other up-and-comers who are going to try to take the throne. I think a lot of documentaries, you kind of go in with an idea of what might happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it just didn't quite play out the way that they thought it would. I think they thought Lou Ferrigno was going to be a bigger deal in this competition than he ended up being. And it's just just like he had in the previous 7 or 8 years or whatever it was, Arnold Schwarzenegger boat raced this, and he went out on top. And it's an interesting kind of little subculture, these bodybuilders. What you don't really get into the steroid aspect of it, and how they get as big as they are, which clearly requires some help.
Yeah, and I don't feel like this documentary was necessarily meant for the female audience. It's a lot looking at men's bodies, which is fine, but I started getting nauseous. It's not just hey, look how great my body is. It's flexing, and you see their veins, and it's not a good look to me. But that's me. Maybe people are into that. I guess there are people that are into that.
She likes the fatties.
Stop!
So I'm a winner.
No, that is not at all what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about people doing that as a sport. It's just not my thing to watch people just stand there and pose.
Yeah. It's kind of it's a weird thing, if you don't know anything about it, which I really don't. And you're kind of sitting there watching it. It's just pageantry things I'm not into. So one of the reasons I don't like figure skating is not the fact that it's the skating or the outfits or anything like that. It's the fact that it's not a purely a grade on the on what you're doing. The way that they look, their outfits and that kind of thing plays into the score, completely diminishes it as a sport for me.
Are we going to get into this debate about what's a sport and what's not a sport?
I'm not saying it's not a sport. It diminishes it for me because it takes away the sporting aspect of it.
Okay.
To me, a sport is purely the effort that goes into the competition. It should be based solely on what's happening on the field of play, whatever that field of play is. And it shouldn't involve a pitcher shouldn't doesn't get penalized because they their stirrups a certain way, and a football player doesn't get penalized because his helmet doesn't look a certain way or his outfit isn't.
I don't know if that's necessarily true.
It is true. It's 100% true.
Isn't there reasons why like football players can't wear their uniforms a certain way?
Well, that's just within the rules of the game, but it doesn't change the score of the game ever.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So this is another one of the like this whole like the way that these guys look and they do certain things, it's like it's completely arbitrary as to.
But you do think that figure skaters are athletes?
Absolutely.
Okay, because I was going to say like,
no,
pool players are not much of an athlete.
No,
right?
I'm 100% behind them being athletes. I just think the sport is diminished by the pageantry.
I think it's way due for a
perhaps
vamp for sure.
Yeah, but this is another one of those like pageantry sports, and I'm just sitting there just kind of watching it. It's like it's interesting to see the kind of the where like the backgrounds of these guys, like Lou Ferrigno is like, I don't even think he was an aspiring actor at the time.
No, neither was Arnold, I don't think.
I think Arnold was about to try to make that move.
Was that when Clash of the... Was he in...
No, he was in Conan.
Conan, but there was a movie before that where he played like a Greek god or something.
I can't remember, but yeah, he was about to step into that. And I mean, you can see his charisma is like...
He's got great charisma.
It's like dripping off the screen.
Yeah.
It's like you totally see why this guy became a movie star.
Yeah, I mean, he like had funny jokes and he liked everybody and he was always messing around with people and yeah, he definitely had screen chemistry.
Well, I think the thing that really comes across in this that gets lost in a lot of his movies is how intelligent he is.
Yeah, I
mean, very smart man.
Previous presidents aside, yeah, like he at least is intelligent and could, I mean, he didn't do a horrible job as governor.
No, I didn't hate him as governor. I hated how he got into the role because I thought that whole thing was a shit show. But that's a whole other. That's for rating the politics when we start that show.
Oh yeah, let's totally do that. Also, it felt like a showcase and not a documentary. Like I wasn't really sure what they were trying to say. Mm-hmm. You know, like were they saying like, look how hard these guys work, or look how competitive it is? I wasn't really sure what they were trying to say. Like
the one thing I don't think came across was like, what were the sacrifices? I didn't really see any huge downside to them doing this that would require, like, they didn't have to like not do something in order to do this. Like there was that one guy and he seemed to just like have his like own business and he seemed to do fine. Lou Ferrigno's a really young guy, but he didn't.
What was great about the Lou Ferrigno aspect is, his dad was like managing him, right? So he had a lot of like, there's like a scene where he's eating spaghetti with his dad and they're like talking about, trying to beat Arnold. And so that was kind of interesting, but,
Like, as a character study, there's some kind of interesting stuff there, but I didn't really understand what the filmmakers were trying to tell us, which is usually what happens in a documentary. That, like, whether you agree with the point that the documentarian is making or not, they're usually trying to tell you some kind of narrative, and I didn't really quite get what they were doing.
I didn't really either. Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of interviews or backstories. There were a few interviews, but there was nothing like
I thought it could
in depth.
Yeah, I thought it could have used more on that end.
Yeah, there was no like in-depth interviews, which would have been more interesting.
Yeah, like, I mean, you've got someone like Arnold who, he's got a pretty interesting background, like how he came here and he really didn't speak a ton of English, but he's really intelligent. He spoke fluent, Austrian, obviously, and he spoke German, so he's already multilingual, and then he comes here and you hear him talking. Yes, he's got an accent, but he speaks very well. Like he grammatic, like that's usually what happens when you've got someone who doesn't speak, quote unquote, speak great English. is, you know, their grammar's off. Not necessarily like that they have an accent or whatever, but grammatically English is different than a lot of languages, but his grammar is always correct.
Yes, yeah.
And, you know, he picked that up fairly quickly in his, you know, in his youth. You know, he's like early third or late 20s.
Late 20s, I think it was.
I think he came to the United States when he was about 20. So, you know, in that basically decade of time, you know, he learned how to speak the language really, really well and navigate, you know, life here and flourish.
Right, but when it came to this documentary,
they don't really get into it at all.
They don't get into it at all,
which is
weird.
And, you know, I would have liked to know a little bit more about how Lou Ferrigno got into all this, because he was really young at the time. And that other guy that, you know, from the Midwest.
Yes.
Like what his deal was, and like, you know, like kind of showcasing like his regular life versus this other life, and maybe just bringing in more of those guys. Like maybe they like started doing like interviews with these guys, and I'm like, wow, these guys are really boring.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. What's interesting too is like not all my life, but I remember like as a kid and as I was growing up and everything, it was like, oh, you gotta watch Pumping Iron. You gotta watch Pumping Iron. Like I remember it was like a big deal. I don't know why.
I don't ever remember.
I don't know why, but I guess in my circle of life it was. I don't know, but like
if you're from the Bruno, you gotta watch Pumping Iron.
I'm not from the Bruno. I'm from Daly City.
Oh, so sorry. It's
big difference.
So different.
Anyway, like. Yeah, I don't know why, like, I remember my friends always talking about this movie. I don't know why. So, like, watching it finally after all this time, I'm like, what? Okay, that wasn't that interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
I gave this one a 66. Jerry gave it a 66, so the list score is 66.
All right, if you've watched Pumping Iron and you'd like to tell us what you thought about it, please do so in the comments. Please like and subscribe to our channel. If you want to talk to us directly, please do so at ratingthelist@gmail.com. But for now, I'm Jerry.
I'm Brad.
And we're rating the list. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.